restaurants and pastry shops, bakeries. If you want to visit the North End, you might want to remember this street right here is called Hanover, and that's the main road of the neighborhood. That's where you find Mike's Pastry and a lot of great restaurants and modern pastry. You could walk over here from where we started. It's really not that far. Or you could take the Green Line to this building right here. That's Haymarket Station. You're going to see the Holocaust Memorial on the left. The chambers represent the concentration camps in Nazi Europe. It's very moving. And on the other side of it is the Union Oyster House, America's oldest run restaurant. Never closed down since the 1820s. It's a real Boston landmark. This is called the Blackstone Block, and it's the oldest commercial block in town. There's a lot of good restaurants. And this is City Hall to the right, this plaza. The mayor is Martin Walsh. He's a fairly young guy, very ambitious. He's very big on international investment. Coming up on the left is the Faneuil Hall Marketplace, the most traveled place in New England. About 20 million people come here every year. Lots of street performers, a lot of history. There's Samuel Adams right there. He's the man who was the brains of the revolution. It was organized on the second floor. Quincy Market's right behind it. That's a big food court. I'm sure a lot of you have been over there already. Now, it's kind of hard to imagine because it looks so different nowadays. But this street up ahead here, State Street, that used to be part of Long Wharf, the big shipping port, but now the Long Wharf is pushed way back. That's why it took so long to build the highway, because they pushed the harbor back, they filled it all in, and then they punched a big hole right through it. Nowadays, if you want to find the wharf, it's down at the bottom where the aquarium is. That used to be called King Street. At the top of the wharf is where the royal governor used to work. You can see that building with the balcony up ahead to the right there. We call that the old State House nowadays. And this was the site of the Boston Massacre, the first big incident that led to the revolution. It happened 3 years before the Boston Tea Party. The massacre was a big drunken labor riot. The British Army, the soldiers were allowed to take day jobs to supplement their incomes, and they were taking jobs away from locals. So the locals were sitting in taverns all day, mad at the British because they didn't have any work. So they came out here on March 5th, 1770, and they started throwing rocks and snowballs at the soldiers. In self-defense, they fired, and they killed 5 people. Sam Adams got the redcoats kicked off the street corners, so without them around, they threw the tea in the harbor. King George retaliates by shutting down Long Wharf. He closed the 3rd busiest shipping port in his empire. Basically starved everybody. It's just a matter of time before the war started. It's a great little building. It's open till 5, first opened 1713. So here's the downtown area to the left here. The heart of old downtown. A lot of these streets were cow paths originally. It's kind of a confusing downtown. If you notice to the left of the street just kind of ends, it turns into an alleyway. The streets are very narrow. It's kind of like the bottom of Manhattan, the old Seaport District. Up ahead to the right, you can see the steaming tea kettle. Steaming here since the 1870s. That was Starbucks. By the end of the tour, I'll show you how you can walk the Freedom Trail in one afternoon. I'll be pointing out the Freedom Trail in a second. It's a simple red line on the ground, and it's the best way not to get lost. When I lived in New York, my friends would come back on Monday and say, hey, we went to Boston, your hometown, over the weekend. We had a lousy time. And every time I asked them why, they said because they got lost. They didn't take a tour. They didn't bring a map with them. Just walked around in circles. Coming up on the left, you're going to see the first graveyard. King's Chapel burial ground for the first settlers from England are buried. They came in 1630 in little wooden boats. They came with a vision and a goal. And that goal was to build a Dunkin' Donuts in every corner. First public school was built here on School Street, Boston Latin. Here's Parker House Hotel. This is the oldest run hotel in the country's history. Where Charles Dickens used to stay. Boston Green Bay was pretty big. Now, Massachusetts was a company out of England. It was called the Mass Bay Company Charter. It was fishing, shipping, and farming. And then it became a colony, and then a commonwealth. And now it's a state. Virginia, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania are also other commonwealths. Before this was called Boston, it was called Tremontaine. 3 mountains. This is Tremont Street. Boston used to consist of 3 huge hills, and that's where they got the dirt to fill in downtown Boston. You got to see the Beantown pub on the left here. The only pub in the world you can drink a cold Sam Adams and look right out the window at a cold Sam Adams. He's the first guy. The next to him, the 5 victims of the massacre. Paul Revere's in here. The richest man in New England was John Hancock. He's in here. He financed the war against the British Army. All those guys were Masons. Ben Franklin's family's in there. He was a Mason. Yeah, if you noticed on the sidewalk there's a red line. That's what I was talking about. That's the Freedom Trail. There are 16 of those medallions all over the city, and the red line connects them. The whole thing is 2.5 miles. If you're not going to do the whole thing, take the trolley here to Park Street and then just walk it down to Faneuil Hall. It's not far at all. It's like 4 blocks. It's 400 years of history. It's mostly downhill and in the shade. It's a nice walk. Boston started as a tiny little town, so all that old colonial history is in very close walking distance. The last thing you want to do, though, is start the Freedom Trail here and go all the way out to the end and walk back. Because that means you'll be walking 5 miles. There's a ferry boat where the aquarium is at the bottom of State Street, and that takes you out to the end of the Freedom Trail without having to walk. And this big park on the right, this is Boston Common, America's oldest public park. And this is where they put the cows and the horses. It's where the British soldiers camped out during the Revolution. And you'll notice there's an information center on the right. This is the official beginning of that Freedom Trail. And you can pick up a guidebook here, or get an actual guide. Yeah, America's first subway system runs under this sidewalk behind me here. This will be called the Green Line nowadays. I just saw this great documentary on Netflix. It was called The Race Underground. It's all about building that subway system down there. It was very controversial because a lot of people didn't like the idea of going underground because people were so religious they thought it meant shaking hands with the devil. So they had to convince people that it was actually good for public health. Boston was very overcrowded because Boston was the capital, so people were always trying to come in, and there were 400,000 people walking around every day. They realized they had to get those people out of the city for health reasons. It's modeled after the London system. Chinatown's coming up on the left here. This is the very edge of Chinatown. And that's the theater district straight ahead. Now, most of our founding fathers were Masons, and Boston had the first Grand Lodge. It's right over here. The fact that Paul Revere would associate with John Hancock would be a very rare thing because they were of different classes. Paul Revere was a working class man, John Hancock was very wealthy. And they could never associate in the street together because they wanted to divide the classes, but they could be Masonic Lodge and network. The night Paul Revere took his historic ride, he was going out to see Hancock and Sam Adams. And he was trying to tell them that the Redcoats were going to arrest them and most likely hang them for being traitors. The next morning, the revolution started. If you're not familiar with Paul Revere, most American children in school learned the poem, Paul Revere's Ride, and that was written by Longfellow. And that was about 100 years after the actual ride. The Masons were accused of being a religion because of the symbolism. It's not a religion. It's a secret of fraternal order, which is not even that secretive anymore. You'll see a lot of stuff online about the Masons. They usually link them to like UFOs and crazy stuff. It's all nonsense. Charitable organization. Shriners are Masons.